What happens when you stop chasing? What happens when you pull back, not out of anger, not out of manipulation, but because you've realized something fundamental? She's no longer a priority. Most men believe that if they lose interest in a woman, she'll just walk away, indifferent, unmoved, as if it never mattered to her. But that's rarely the case, because when a woman senses that your attention is slipping, when she feels that shift in your energy, it triggers something deep inside her, a primal realization. See, women are far more attuned to social dynamics than men. They pick up on subtle changes before you even articulate them. And when she realizes you've stopped caring, it shakes her to the core. Why? Because attention is currency. When you withdraw yours, you challenge her sense of value and her reaction. It will reveal everything, who she truly is, how she truly saw you, and whether she ever respected you at all. Why is it that when a man pulls away, when he finally stops investing his energy, his time, and his attention into a woman, her reaction tells you more about her than anything else ever could? That's the question you need to ask yourself. Because the way a person responds to a loss, to the withdrawal of something they once took for granted, is perhaps the single greatest test of their character. And you see this play out all the time, don't you? You pull back, and suddenly she's either frantic or she's indifferent. She either starts scrambling for your attention, testing you, trying to reel you back in, or she simply moves on as if you never mattered. Now, why is that? Why do some women fight to regain a connection while others discard it as if it were nothing? The answer is brutal, but it's also liberating. Her reaction isn't about you. It never was. It's about what you represented. Because here's the thing. People don't always love you. They love what you provide. They love how you make them feel. And when you take that away, you expose the truth. A woman who saw you as a means to an end, a source of validation, security, or convenience, she won't feel the loss of you. She'll feel the loss of the benefit you provided. And that distinction is everything. You see, we like to delude ourselves into believing that relationships exist in some pure realm, that people engage with one another based on noble ideals of love, respect, and connection. But strip away the romanticism, and what you often find is a transaction, not in a cynical money for affection sense, but in a deeply psychological one, a trait of status, attention, security. And that's why when you step away, when you remove your energy, some people react with anger, with desperation, with manipulation, because they never valued you, they valued what you did for them. And this is where most men fail. They see that desperation, that emotional outburst, and they mistake it for love. They think, she must care. Look how much she's reacting. But let me ask you something. Does a drug addict love the dealer, or do they love the high? When you pull away and a woman lashes out, crying, provoking you, playing games to test whether she can still control you, you need to see it for what it is. It's not proof of affection. It's proof that she's losing something she assumed she would always have. And a woman who valued you for you, she won't react that way. She won't try to manipulate or punish you for your absence. She might feel the loss, but she'll respect it, she'll reflect on it. And that's the distinction between a woman worth your time and a woman who is only ever using your presence as a crutch. Now, this is where it gets even darker, because if you don't understand this, you'll fall into a trap. You'll think that if a woman reacts too calmly, it means she never cared, so you'll go chasing after the wrong kind of reaction, the fiery, emotionally unstable response that looks like passion but is actually just dysfunction. And you'll mistake chaos for meaning, and then what happens? You go back, you reaffirm to her that yes, she can push your buttons, that yes, she still controls the frame, and then the cycle repeats, because what you just taught her is that all she has to do to keep you is create enough tension, enough instability to drag you back into the game, and that is where weak men are forged. That's how you turn into the kind of man who is led by emotion rather than standing firm in his own sense of self-respect. So, what's the solution? It's simple, but it's not easy. You must learn to walk away, not as a manipulation tactic, not as a game, but as a reflection of your own self-worth. Because a man who walks away with dignity, without rage, without the need to prove anything, that's the man a woman actually remembers. That's the man who is respected. And here's the final hard truth. Respect matters more than love. Love can be fleeting, it can be impulsive, it can be irrational, but respect is built on something deeper. A woman who respected you will feel the weight of your absence. She'll question herself. She'll wonder what she lost. But a woman who never valued you to begin with, she'll move on with chilling ease. And in that moment, you'll see the truth. So the next time you pull away, watch. Watch carefully. Because her reaction will tell you more than any words ever could. And if the truth stings, good. That means you needed to hear it. Why do people stay in relationships they know are destroying them? Why do men ignore the warning signs, the gut feelings, the blatant red flags, and continue to invest in someone who doesn't truly value them? You've seen it. Maybe you've even lived it. You watch yourself compromise. You feel yourself bending, weakening, giving more than you should until one day you wake up and realize you don't even recognize who you are anymore. And this is the problem. Weak men allow themselves to be chipped away piece by piece until there's nothing left. They ignore the obvious. They rationalize. They say, oh, she didn't mean it that way, or I just need to try harder, or it's not that bad. But let's tell the truth. If you have to constantly convince yourself that something isn't that bad, it's already terrible. You need to understand something fundamental about human nature, about your nature. You are wired to seek out the path of least resistance. Your brain, in its primitive survival instinct, is always whispering, don't upset her, don't rock the boat, keep the peace. But what does that lead to? Does that lead to happiness, strength, fulfillment? No, it leads to slow, agonizing decay. It leads to death by 1,000 concessions. You let one thing slide, then another, and before you know it, you've been domesticated. You've traded your integrity for the illusion of comfort. And you think, well, at least I'm not alone. But let me ask you, what's worse? Being alone or being with someone who makes you feel utterly insignificant? Because those are the real choices. A man who betrays himself, who stays silent when he should speak, who tolerates the intolerable, will never be respected. Not by his woman, not by society, and certainly not by himself. And what do you think happens when a woman realizes she does not respect you? I'll tell you, she will test you, she will push, she will provoke, she will take more and more, waiting to see if you will finally put a stop to it. And when you don't, when you let it continue, she will lose all attraction to you. Not because she is cruel, not because she wants to, but because she has to. Because deep down, a woman cannot love a man she does not respect. And this is where men make their fatal mistake. They think, if I just show her how much I love her, if I just keep proving myself, she will change. But that's not how it works. Love is not given to men out of pity. It is earned through strength, through the ability to say, no, this is where it stops. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but what if I lose her? What if she leaves? And the answer to that is simple. If standing up for yourself means losing her, then you never really had her in the first place. Because what you had wasn't love. It was a power dynamic, a test you were always failing. This is the harsh truth most men refuse to accept. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. If you let disrespect slide, if you avoid confrontation, if you lower your standards out of fear, you are telling the world that you are unworthy of better treatment. And the world, including the person you're with, will believe you. So what's the way out? It starts with one thing. The ability to walk away, not in anger, not as a manipulation tactic, but from a place of absolute self-respect. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and decide, I would rather be alone with my dignity than in a relationship where I am diminished. And when you truly believe that, when you internalize that truth, everything changes. Because then suddenly you are no longer trapped. You are no longer a prisoner of your own fear. You become the man who is willing to lose everything except himself. And that is the man a woman respects. That is the man she chooses. Not because she needs to, not because she is manipulated into it, but because she wants to. And the final hard truth, if you are in a relationship where you constantly feel small, where you are forced to prove your worth, then you've already lost. The only thing left to decide is whether you will continue living that loss or whether you will stand up, take back your power, and walk away from anything that does not serve you. Because in the end, a man who refuses to be diminished, a man who values himself more than he fears loneliness, that is the man who wins. Always. Why do people tolerate being manipulated? Why do men allow themselves to be emotionally twisted, guilt-tripped, and psychologically subdued in their relationship? It's a devastating question because the answer is often fear. the fear of conflict, the fear of rejection, the fear of losing something they think they can't live without. But let me tell you something. If you have to betray yourself to keep someone, you've already lost them. There is no compromise when it comes to self-respect. You either have it or you don't. And the moment you start bargaining for your dignity, when you allow someone to gaslight you, to twist your words, to make you doubt your own reality, that's the moment you give away your power. That's the moment you stop being a man in a relationship and start being a hostage. And let's be very clear about what manipulation looks like. It isn't always overt. It isn't always screaming and accusations. Often it's subtle. It's a slow erosion of your confidence. It's the strategic withdrawal of affection when you don't do what they want. It's the constant shifting of blame. Suddenly, every problem in the relationship is your fault. She's upset. You didn't communicate well enough. She crossed a boundary. You made her feel insecure. She disrespected you. Well, if you were more attentive, maybe she wouldn't have to. Do you see what's happening here? Reality is being rewritten in real time. And you're the one taking the blame. And it's so insidious because at first, it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like compromise. It feels like you're being a good partner, someone who listens, someone who tries to understand. But there's a difference between understanding and surrendering. And the moment you start apologizing for things you didn't do, excusing behavior you know is wrong, and explaining yourself for the 100th time to someone who never actually listens, that's the moment you're trapped. And let me tell you something about manipulators. They don't respect the people they control. They might enjoy the game, they might enjoy the power, but deep down they despise weakness. And make no mistake, if you allow yourself to be controlled, if you allow yourself to be played, she will never look at you with admiration. She might use you, she might even claim to love you, but respect, no. Because how can you respect someone who doesn't respect themselves? Now, some of you might be sitting there thinking, but I love her, I don't want to walk away. And I understand that. Love is powerful. But let me ask you something. What kind of love requires you to sacrifice your dignity? What kind of love demands your silence, your submission, your constant self-doubt? That isn't love. That's dependency. That's emotional slavery. And if that's what you're in, then walking away isn't just an option. It's the only option. And I know it's terrifying. I know the thought of leaving, of being alone, of starting over feels like a nightmare. But let me ask you, what's the real nightmare? Being alone for a while? Or spending years, maybe even decades in a relationship where you are slowly being broken down, where you lose your confidence, where you wake up one day and realize you don't even know who you are anymore. Because that's the real cost of tolerating manipulation. It ruins you. And here's the truth. The moment you stop tolerating it, the moment you finally stand up for yourself, you change everything. You don't just walk away from the person manipulating you, you walk away from the version of yourself that allowed it. And that is liberation. That is when you take your power back. That is when you become the man who will never, ever let himself be diminished again. Because in the end, a man who refuses to be manipulated, who refuses to be broken down, is a man who commands respect. And that kind of man, he never has to beg for love. Because real love, true love, is only ever given to the man who knows he doesn't need it to survive. Why do men stay in relationships where they are not respected? Why do they tolerate disrespect, dishonesty, and emotional neglect? It's a devastating question because the answer is often self-betrayal. The refusal to confront hard truths. The willingness to trade integrity for temporary comfort. But let me tell you something. If you stay where you are disrespected, you are telling the world that you do not value yourself. And that is a catastrophic mistake. Respect is not something you beg for. It's not something you negotiate. It is something you command. And you command it not through arrogance or force, but through unwavering self-respect, through a refusal to tolerate what you know is beneath you. But the moment you accept disrespect, the moment you excuse it, rationalize it, or look the other way, you have already lost. Because the person who disrespects you once will do it again. And the more you tolerate it, the more you teach them that there are no consequences for their actions. And here's the deeper truth. Disrespect doesn't start with outright contempt. It starts small. It starts with little tests, subtle dismissals, sarcastic jabs, moments where you're made to feel foolish for asserting yourself. And if you let those moments slide, they escalate. they turn into full-blown disregard, contempt, betrayal. Because if someone does not respect you at the beginning, they sure as hell won't respect you later. And you might think, well, maybe I can fix this. Maybe I can be more patient, more understanding. Maybe if I prove my worth, she'll respect me more. Wrong. Respect is never earned through submission. It is never earned by bending further, by being more accommodating, by proving that you're worthy of it. The moment you make your dignity dependent on another person's approval, you have already surrendered it. So what do? You set boundaries. And let me be very clear, a boundary is not a request. It is not a suggestion. It is not something you bring up timidly, hoping for approval. It is a line, a hard line. And when it is crossed, there are consequences. You do not debate it. You do not justify it. You enforce it. Because if you don't enforce it, you never had a boundary to begin with. You had a weak preference. And preferences do not command respect. And you might think, well, if I set boundaries, I might lose her. And maybe you will. But if respecting yourself costs you a relationship, then that was never a relationship worth keeping. Because the alternative, the slow erosion of your self-worth, is a far greater price to pay. And here's the thing about respect. It's a mirror. If you demand it and enforce it, you attract people who respect themselves, who value integrity, who understand what it means to have standards. But if you allow disrespect, you invite more of it. You attract people who take advantage, who push limits, who see you as nothing more than a doormat. And this doesn't just affect your romantic relationships. It affects your entire life. A man who tolerates disrespect in one area will tolerate it in others. He'll tolerate it at work, with his friends, in society. And before he knows it, his entire world is built on compromise, on quietly swallowing his frustration, on putting himself last, on being the man who never stands up because standing up feels too risky. But let me tell you something. The real risk is staying silent. The real risk is wasting years in a relationship where you are not valued. The real risk is waking up one day and realizing you have spent your life appeasing someone who never truly saw your worth. And so you have a choice. You can continue making excuses, hoping things will change while you slowly lose yourself, or you can draw a line. Right now, you can decide once and for all that you will no longer tolerate what diminishes you. Because in the end, the man who refuses to tolerate disrespect, the man who walks away when necessary, is the man who commands respect. And that kind of man, he never has to beg for love. Because real love, true love, is only ever given to the man who knows he doesn't need it to survive.
If an illness or accident caused your paycheck to stop today, how long could you maintain your current lifestyle? Would you have enough savings to cover your expenses for weeks, months, or even years? Many people underestimate how quickly financial stability can be disrupted. Medical bills, rent, mortgage, and daily necessities don't pause just because your income does. That's why having a financial safety net is crucial. Life and disability insurance can help replace lost income, ensuring you and your loved ones stay financially secure. Don't wait for the unexpected. Plan today for peace of mind tomorrow. If you're a man with a family, life insurance isn't a choice, it's a responsibility. The best part? You decide your monthly payment. DM me or comment One Life if you're ready to protect your loved ones. Call 330-577-3496 to get started today.